This episode is sponsored by Skillshare. There are two things parents have trouble talking to kids about: the beginning of life, sex, the end of life, death. Which explains why in most children's horror media, death is usually not the focus. This is why Mr. Vampire is so peculiar. It's a 1985 action horror comedy about 僵尸, or Chinese vampire zombies, mythological creatures based on the legend of the body shepherd, who makes a living by transporting corpses back to their home for a proper burial. With death being front and center, it's a marvel this film manages to stay family friendly, considering the film has imageries like this and this. And I do mean family friendly. Unlike most kids' horror films, which adults can still enjoy, Mr. Vampire appeals directly to both adults and children. That's the sort of horror you don't see very often. A horror film you can enjoy with your children. What witchcraft is this? Well, let's dive into Mr. Vampire and take a look at how to make a family horror film. Mr. Vampire tells the story of a Taoist priest and his two apprentices on a job to relocate a corpse that is showing signs of becoming a zombie. After a series of unfortunate mishandlings, the situation gets worse, and the entire village is affected. It's a fun horror experience, akin to classics like The Blob. What's different from The Blob is that the main characters aren't 30-year-old teenagers. They are adults. One of them is an uncle. As backward as it sounds, it's generally easier for kids to fantasize about being an adult than it is for an adult to put themselves in the shoes of a child, especially in live action, an unfortunate culture that I hope would disappear soon. It is especially difficult on the adults and their egos when the parents in children's horror are often idiots. Mr. Vampire on that front features competent adults, although not without flaws. There is a balance that must be maintained. The adults must also not be too adult, bitter and cynical, like those you see in Man of Steel, a style often mistakenly referred to as realistic. Modern horror loves this quote-unquote realism, even when the subject is anything but. When facing greater evil, the characters often exhibit their worst qualities: selfish, ignorance, weak. It's worth pointing out that these realistic characters are almost never realistic. They only feel that way because they are cynically written as a commentary on the human condition, such as fragility. It's the reason why Junji Ito's works feel realistic, even though more often than not, both the characters and the scenarios are underdeveloped. Conversely, children's horror often avoids scaring children altogether. Monster Squad is pretty much just an adventure film with a horror theme. In an effort to avoid traumatizing children, the film somehow becomes less scary than the original Jumanji. Mr. Vampire strikes a balance between the two. The characters are earnest, they are capable, but are children at heart, relatable to both adults and kids. Kinda like Superman, actually. They may be scared, but they always find solutions to the ever-worsening situation. They are hopeful and active, and that changes the tone of the film. My theory is that many children can handle jump scares pretty well, and if they can't, looking away is usually enough. Children can understand that there is no monster. Parents can reassure them. What traumatizes children is not the scare, it's the despair, the suffocating helplessness in adult horror, people being murdered with no one there to help. It invokes the feeling of being alone in the dark, a feeling that every child is familiar with. Mr. Vampire takes that to heart. It is never afraid of showing scary imagery. But while the monster is terrifying, the humans are always fighting against it. Knowing that there's always something you can do is not only reassuring to children, but maybe a lesson many cynical adults should learn too. Do you want to learn how to herd zombies? Well, we can help you with that, but Skillshare can help you write your own zombie fiction. With the current epidemic, the best way to ease your mind from the outside world is to explore your inner world. Skillshare is an online learning community where millions of members explore their creativity. With thousands of classes, including fiction, non-fiction, shorts, and even essays, you can learn and hone your craft specific to your interests. I recommend Storytelling 101, in which author Daniel Jose Older teaches you how to make your stories feel alive. Classes are concise, flexible, and affordable. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month. The first 1,000 subscribers to click the link in the description will get a 2-month free trial of premium membership, so you can explore your creativity, give Skillshare a try, and build your own fantasy. But what about death? It's scary, it's real, it's something that we are all helpless against, and it's jumping around in the movie. Wow, making a lot of assumptions here. Much like sex ed, education with regards to death is difficult, and very lacking in most parts of the world. Most kids' horror just avoids both. Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, great as they are, usually focus on the monsters rather than death. And much like sex, it feels very scary if the subject remains taboo. The forbidden nature is perhaps what makes death the main attraction in so many films, namely the Friday the 13th movies and the later Saw movies. It's like pornography. Its taboo status makes it more thrilling to watch. On this, Mr. Vampire talks about death rather openly. A big part of the movie is set inside a mortuary, a cliché horror setting, but in the film, outside of its opening scene, the mortuary is never depicted as a scary place. In fact, as the film progresses, it becomes one of the most familiar and safe locations, quite a reversal. The film also shows a lot of bodies, being a zombie movie and all. But outside of the evil vampires, none of the corpses are depicted as scary. It even shows the good vampires fighting against the bad vampire, which signifies that death is not scary. It is evil that is scary. Additionally, the film shows a lot of rituals surrounding the culture of death. But unlike witchcrafts in your usual horror movies, the rituals are actually kinda cool. I wonder if any kids want to be a mortician after seeing this movie. The Taoist magic is used to show the solemn nature of death. How death is an important part of our culture, with many rules and traditions that must be respected. In this film, death is dignified. It demands a lot of respect, and it can be sad to those who are affected by it. But otherwise, death is seen as nothing more than a natural part of life. The main thrill of the film came from the action and funny but nevertheless well-crafted suspense. In some way, the film is a lot more respectable than it appears. Certainly more tasteful than the cheap thrills offered by a lot of slasher films. Now, I don't mean to shame on horror films from the West. Are You Afraid of the Dark is honestly amazing, and makes me jealous I didn't grow up with it. What I'm criticizing is the culture surrounding the media divide between children and adults. A divide that is especially deep in the horror culture. Adults are too high and mighty to watch a children's horror, even when the adult horror they watch are often less cerebral than a teen novel. But it wasn't always like this.
I am Dracula.
Gothic horrors made by Universal from the 20s to the 40s are all family friendly, even if it's not aimed at a young audience, even if the films contain critique on the human nature.
I know what it feels like to be God.
There are always fantasy films with a good lesson that children can understand and enjoy. But as cinema progresses and as horror films push the envelope further and farther, it also becomes very jaded. So many films chase after sensationalism. Even the well-crafted ones don't always have a strong moral lesson. That's a shame. Because a good horror movie, enjoyed by the entire family together, can be a great conversation starter. Moral lessons about hubris, about how power corrupts, about death, are carefully crafted by many artists to serve as a jumping-off point for parents to teach their kids. I think, as adults, we should get off our high horses and start learning with our children. Mr. Rogers. He has this one episode where he talks very openly to kids about the assassination of RFK. In it, the show explains to children what assassination means and how people are coping about this event.
I plead for your protection and support of your young children.
It's one of the most emotional moments in all of children's media, and even as an adult, it's really hard to watch. But also as an adult, I learned so much from a children's show.
So proud of you, Francois.
Ultimately, I think it's not just horror films that have become sensationalized, but as adults, we forgot how to be hopeful. We love the savagery and greed on display in movies like Parasite. We look at the Sam Raimi Spider-Man and think its upbeat charm as cheesy. That's not to say cynical films are bad. I like Parasite enough. But we don't have to be so bitter all the time. Mr. Vampire may not be any high-class entertainment, but under its pulpy genre and premise, the film has a good message, a hopeful message. It doesn't chase after cheap thrills. Characters do good to make the world a better place. It's a simple lesson, but a lesson children need. And a lesson adults often forget. A lesson I forgot all the time. So if you want to have a spooky fun time, give Mr. Vampire a try. Open your heart and let it lift your spirit. There is a lot we can still learn as a family together.